Bharat Defense Tech Show 2026. I request you all to please settle down and please put your phones on silent mode so that we can do our work, do our jobs without any distractions. And we'll be needing 5 more minutes as we are waiting for our guest of honors to reach the venue. So another 5 minutes and we will begin the inaugural ceremony. Thank you so much. Sadar Pranam, Namaste, and a very warm welcome to all of you, and a very good morning. On behalf of the organizing committee and our esteemed partners, it is my profound honor to welcome you to the Bharat Defense Tech Show 2026. I'm Sandeep Sharma, but you can call me Sandy, and I am the voice of BDTS. BDTS 2026, a landmark gathering of India's finest defense minds, innovators and strategic thinkers. Today, we stand at the crossroads of tradition and transformation, a moment where India's ancient strategic wisdom meets cutting-edge technology, a platform where the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat transforms into tangible defense capabilities. Over the next 2 days, this summit will serve as the crucible for ideas that will shape India's defense future, from code to combat readiness. We now invite our distinguished dignitaries to grace the stage for the ceremonial lamp lighting, a symbol of knowledge, innovation, and India's unwavering commitment to defense sovereignty. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite on the stage Vice Admiral Sanjay Jasjeet Singh, SYSM, PVSM, AVSM, NM, PhD retired, and currently he is the Director General of USI. I would like to invite Lieutenant General Mr. A.K. Bhatt, Director General, Indian Space Association. Next, I would like to invite Air Marshal Nagesh Kapoor, SYSM, PVSM, AVSM, VM, and currently Vice Chief of the Air Staff, India. And we have one more dignitaries, Srimati Dipti Mohil Chawla, IDAS, Additional Secretary, Department of defense. I think she'll be joining in a while. Also, I would like to invite our event director, Mr. Mayank Harlalka, to join us for the lamp lighting. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm round of applause as our distinguished guests illuminate the path forward for India's defense technological supremacy. Thank you so much. We all understand Hindi, right? So in between, I'll be communicating in Hindi also. Okay. So जैसा कि हमारी परंपरा है कि कोई गेस्ट जब हमारे द्वार आते हैं तो हम उनका सम्मान करते हैं. So let's continue the tradition, and I would like to invite I would request Mr. Jasjit Singh ji to please do the felicitation for to Lieutenant General Mr. A.K. Bhatt, Director General ISA. So I request Vice Admiral Sanjay Jasjit Singh ji, SYSM, PVSM, AVSM, NM, PhD retired DG USI, to please felicitate Mr. Bhatt. Now I request Air Marshal Nagesh Kapoor, SYSM, PVSM, AVSM, VM, Vice Chief of the Air Staff India, to please receive the felicitation by none other than our Vice Admiral Sanjay Jasjit Singh ji. Now, vice versa, I would request Air Marshal Nagesh Kapoor, who is the Vice Chief of the Air Staff India, to please felicitate our Vice Admiral Sanjay Jasjit Singh ji. Thank you, esteemed dignitaries, distinguished chief guest, members of our armed forces, representatives from the Ministry of Defense, DRDO, Defense PSUs, international delegation from 22 nations, contains of industry, innovators, and dear friends. Welcome to New Delhi. Welcome to Manekshaw Center, and welcome to BDTS 2026. This is not just a conference. This is a national mission. A mission to transform India from a defense importer to a global defense export powerhouse. Under the visionary leadership of our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji and guided by our Honorable Raksha Mantri Shri Rajnath Singh ji, India's defense sector is undergoing a renaissance. Today, we are no longer satisfied with Make in India. We are now focused on design in India, develop in India, and deploy for the world. BDTS 2026 brings together over 1,000 delegates from the defense ecosystem, 400 plus decision makers from government, military, and industries, 100 plus defense technology companies showcasing indigenous solution, 50 plus startups defining the future of warfare, ambassadors and defense attached from 22 nations seeking partnership. Over these 2 days, you will witness 20 plus high-level sessions covering AI, drone, space technology, cybersecurity, and autonomous system. 8 roundtable discussions addressing policy reforms and export opportunities. A dedicated exhibition featuring India's most advanced defense technologies. The Next Gen Defense Startup Showcase. Tomorrow's defense giants presenting today. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to hear some wise words from our dignitaries. First of all, I would like to invite Air Marshal Nagesh Kapoor as the Vice Chief of this Air Staff India. Commissioned in 1986, he is an experienced fighter pilot and qualified flying instructor with over 3,400 flying hours, primarily on MiG-21 and MiG-29 variants. His career includes serving as defense attached to Pakistan and AOC in Sea Training Command. He was instrumental in the induction of the PC-7 Mk2 aircraft. His distinguished service has been recognized with the Param Vishist Seva Medal, Sarvottam Yuddha Seva Medal, and Vayu Sena Medal. He is an alumnus of National Defense Academy and the National Defense College. Ladies and gentlemen, Vice Chief of Air Staff India, Air Marshal Nagesh Kapoor.
Just as I walked in, life always throws a curveball. So this was not the sequence that it was intended to be in, but I'm prepared. I was to come in the end of this session, but that being what it is, I'm here. Fellow members of the Defense Forces, industry leaders, future leaders of Bharat's defense ecosystem, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you very much for calling me here. It is indeed a good time to be in Delhi. We have a lot of seminars, symposiums. The weather is fantastic. The tulips are very good. Driving down from central Delhi towards this area, and driving back again. Generally a good weather to associate, meet, collaborate, talk, discuss. Then again, it is a very good time for our defense forces and the Indian Air Force in particular. What with the kind of reassurance that we have given to the nation after we conducted that 5-day event in May last, what with a whole lot of pat on the back that we've got from all our countrymen, and we are very thankful to each one of them for that. And having given our adversary a bloodied nose, and I'm not talking about the cricket match that we had yesterday. That also is an event to celebrate. Yes, definitely. It is a good time for the industry, and it is a good time for the industry specific to defense. From whatever I could very quickly take out from Google, our total production last year was 1.5 lakh CR, a growth of 18% from the year before that. Exports have grown from 686 CR to 23,622 CR, an increase of more than 30 times in 10 years. We now export to between 80 and 90 countries. Our top buyers include not only smaller countries from Southeast Asian region to Armenia, France, and also the United States. We aim to increase these exports to about 30,000 CR this year and 50,000 CR by 2029. So indeed, a very good time for us to be in the part of to be a part of the defense industrial ecosystem. Just the other day, we in the Air Force, and I'm sure a lot of our countrymen and everyone put together, were celebrating that what we intended to do with this 114 Rafales has moved forward one step. So it was a great reassurance that we got from our government, and we thank everyone for that. But that day took me back about 40 years when, as a youngster in the squadron, we celebrated the induction of a brand new computer, the first one ever to come into our squadron. It was indeed looked after very well. A separate room was made for it, etc., etc. So that is how big that event was. And from then, 40 years, we've come a long way. We've come a long way, but we are still left with a lot of catching up to do. A lot of catching up to do. The dragon is, I would say, not leapfrogging, it is flying high to our north. And much like the Hungarian horntail in Harry Potter in the Deathly Hallows, it is carrying on its shoulder some of our other neighbors in the region. So we got a lot of catching up to do if we got to keep up with the times. Somewhere in the past 40 years, I kept hearing this phrase over and over again, and as I grew a little senior, more often than what I used to hear it when I was a youngster. Someone said, wars are very good for the economy. It might have been a good statement. It can be debated, actually. So, immediately after World War II, the American economy saw an upsurge. There was an industrial upsurge. It experienced rapid GDP growth. There was near zero unemployment in the American economy, in the United States, and the factories churned overnight to keep the war machine going all around the world. But then, it is a very qualifiable statement, if I was to say that, because somewhere nearer to our present day, as we look at the Russia-Ukraine war, Ukraine's economy is presently down 30%. Gaza, the unemployment has increased to 60%. And the ripple effect on other nations is there to be seen. There is loss of investor confidence. Oil and food prices in some countries, and especially the countries neighboring these conflict zones, have increased. Inflation has increased. And of course, all of us are aware of the disrupted global supply chains. And mind you, I have not even spoken about the human loss as in loss of lives. I have not even spoken about that tragedy at all. So, this statement which, like I said, we used to keep hearing when we were growing up, that wars are good for the economy, can be taken both ways. Then there was this American general, Butler. He wrote a book, very nice and catchy title to it, called War is a Racket. In that, he argued that probably, if they are not good for the economy, then wars are definitely good for business. There is definitely a little greater argument to that statement, I would say. While we could more or less coalesce towards the fact that wars may not be good for the economy, but again, they could be good for business, especially if you are in the defense, military defense or military defense industrial ecosystem. Then they're good for defense contractors. They're good for the energy sector. Prices go up, profits rise, and they are very good for post-war reconstruction. As some creators of hangars and other infrastructure and runways in Pakistan would have gathered from May till now, that they are very good for reconstruction of the infrastructure that gets taken care of by the adversary. So, this also could be debated the other way. But one thing that is actually totally undebatable is that wars are definitely very good for innovation. They're very good for scientific research. New concepts emerge from war. There is definitely an increased knowledge all around. And like I said earlier, there is increased innovation. A case in point that comes from this innovation part is the manner in which you would have seen how we have gone about innovating the use of various drones in warlike situations and even in peace. So today, drones can be used to drop a weapon, to be the eyes and ears of a soldier, to recce and surveil, to bring supplies to far-flung posts, to bring medical aid. Drones could be the weapon, or drones could team up with other weapons in something what we call the MUMT, or the autonomous drone. MUMT is essentially manned-unmanned teaming concept that we got. That brings me back to another phrase that I had heard sometime. Albert Einstein, I'm sure everyone knows who that was. Imagination, he said, is vastly better than knowledge. Because knowledge is limited to what we know and understand, while imagination can embrace all there ever will be to know and understand. And so that is a very critical thing that I think in the situation that we find ourselves in today, when the defense industry is kind of booming, we must not only have knowledge, but we must have that imagination. That is the window that we must exploit. The latest skirmish that we had, Op Sindoor, actually is that window of opportunity. It is open. It is open very recently. And in our context, I personally feel, and I hope and I pray that that window continues to remain open for a much, much longer time, because like I said, we have a lot of catching up to do, and in case we can give this a boost, then definitely we'll be in a good space. The number of times that all of us, and there are a lot of familiar faces in the hall today, that we have met in the past about 8 to 9 months since Sindoor happened, is a testimony to the fact that we all, as a collective body of people, realize and understand that this is the moment, this is the opportunity to encash, not literally, figuratively. The rapidity with which new technologies are being brought forward in such conferences is matched, unfortunately, only by the rapidity with which some of the tech that we bring forward gets outdated. And that, again, I feel, is an opportunity for us. What we all know, and what I am going to talk about now, or what I am going to say in the next few lines, is known to everyone. And it is at the cost of repetition that I say that we are in a global turmoil. There is increased nationalism all around. The world is going gaga about a red cap with a phrase on top of it, and that is the new nationalism that is going around, and which increasingly means that there is reduced cooperation between nations. I have spoken about the disrupted supply chains, and that is a big cause to ask for Atmanirbharta. That is a big cause for asking for self-reliance. Defense systems, ladies and gentlemen, and I need not convert to the I need not preach to the converted. Defense systems are very complex. There can never ever be a single OEM of a defense system in the world at all. At best, the greatest manufacturer, the biggest manufacturer would be an aggregator at best. We will need to cooperate between OEMs. Faster collaboration would mean faster results. I assure you, and you would know it already, the market is massive. It's big. It has got a lot of opportunities for everyone. And so I urge you not to undercut any other vendor. Be a facilitator to the process. Because if you do not do that, then the process will be set back many months. And the time for a good idea would be lost. So I urge you all to come together to produce goods which can be readily implementable, readily used in our defense scenario today. That is what Bharat Defense Tech Show must aim at. The tagline to this somewhere said, from code to combat readiness. If you permit, the organizers permit, then I will add a little bit of a little extra alliteration to this whole tagline. I'd say code to combat readiness through cooperation and collaboration. So that is what I urge you to do. This essentially implies that innovation ecosystems, not just individual companies or institutions, will define national capability. And this is where India has a unique opportunity. India today stands at a rare convergence of talent, policy intent, and operational insight. We have a very vibrant startup ecosystem, a deep pool of engineers and scientists, and our defense forces that are amongst the best, most operationally experienced in the world. The government's emphasis on Atmanirbharta in defense must be seen through this operational lens. Our recent experiences have made one thing clear: dependence on external supply chains, restricted technologies, or delayed upgrades can directly affect readiness. Self-reliance is not about closing doors. It is about ensuring freedom of action. It is about owning critical technologies, controlling upgrade pathways, and retaining the ability to adapt to systems rapidly when it matters most. True self-reliance is not about what we assemble. It is about what we design, what we own, and how independently we can act. For the industry, especially the startups and SMEs, this represents an extraordinary opportunity. India does not need to replicate yesterday's systems. It needs to build tomorrow's capabilities that are modular, software-driven, upgradable, and resilient, capabilities that evolve as threats evolve without waiting for external permissions or dependence. In modern warfare, advantage is increasingly accruing to those who can establish awareness early, maintain persistent observation, and respond decisively across distance. Our own environment demands that we do this every day. Recent conflicts globally have shown that the most decisive moments often occur in the space between detection and decision, measured in seconds. Those who compress this timeline shape the battle on their terms. Innovation does not happen in isolation, like I said. Adaptation is a collective effort. For innovation to translate into combat capability, collaboration is essential. This is at the cost of repetition. The defense forces must be partners. We accept that in development and not just end users. So there will be greater partnership, and I assure you that. Industry must move beyond vendor mindset towards co-creation. Academia must align research with operational relevance. Startups must give pathways to scale, integrate, and sustain. The defense challenges of the future will not wait for perfect solutions. They will demand acceptable ones built at home. As we look ahead to 2035 and beyond, we must ask ourselves difficult but necessary questions. Are we building systems that can adapt faster than our adversaries? Are we investing enough in indigenous digital backbone and secure architectures? Are we empowering our innovators to think boldly and our institutions to adopt quickly? The answers to these, and I can assure you some of these which are to be looked at from the other side, are already being addressed as I speak. And having been privy to it for the past about a month and a half, this is true. We are moving forward at a good pace. The answers to these questions will define not just our military preparedness, but our strategic autonomy. Moving forward, we must also emphasize responsible innovation, ensuring ethical use of technology, strong cybersecurity frameworks, and global cooperation rooted in mutual trust and stability. India's approach to defense technology must reflect our civilizational values also. Strength with responsibility, power with restraint, and innovation with purpose. Let us use this platform then to challenge assumptions, forge partnerships, and commit ourselves to building what India will need and not just what is available today. The future of India will not be defined solely by what we acquire, like was said by the MC just now, but by what we imagine, engineer, and integrate with confidence, and by our ability to turn innovation into impact, quietly, decisively, and independently. And that is where the written text ends, but I've got something to add. Let us all promise ourselves that we will be true, we will be resilient, we will work together, and we will deliver, because it is only when you deliver that your defense forces will be able to deliver. With that, I leave you for very constructive 2 days of debate. Thank you very much for your attention. I stop short. Otherwise, I would have said, thank you very much for your attention to this matter. But then, that is for someone else to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Please put your hands together for our guest of honor, Air Marshal Nagesh Kapoor. And let's move forward. Let's call the next speaker for the address. Vice Admiral Sanjay Jasjit Singh concluded a distinguished 40-year career in the Indian Navy in July 2025. He held pivotal roles including Vice Chief of Naval Staff and FOC's Western Naval Command, where he managed intense maritime security challenges like piracy and drone attacks. A noted scholar, he holds a PhD and was the lead drafter of the Indian Navy's Maritime Doctrine 2009 and the Indian Maritime Security Strategy 2015. Since January 2026, he serves as the Director General of the United Service Institutions of India, the nation's oldest defense think tank. Ladies and gentlemen, Vice Admiral Sanjay Jasjit Singh, SYSM, PVSM, AVSM, NM, and PSD retired.
Air Marshal Nagesh Kapoor, Vice Chief of Air Staff, Ms. Deepthi Chawla, Assistant Secretary, Department of Defense, Ministry of Defense, General A.K. Bhatt, Director General of the Indian Space Association, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my privilege and a pleasure to be present with you this morning to speak on the occasion of the inaugural Bharat Defense Tech Show, at a time when the transformation of defense and the industry in the country is at an inflection point. This forum is not merely an exhibition. It is an opportunity for convergence of ideas, doctrines, technology, of industry partners, of operational experience, of ideating. We meet at a time and an era that is getting increasingly defined by changes in technology, moving towards hypervelocity warfare, algorithmic battle spaces, autonomous systems, cognitive and information warfare, and the space, cyber, electromagnetic convergence. Technology is no longer an enabler of war. It has veritably become the battle space itself. For decades, self-reliance was a strategic aspiration. We laid down 70% indigenization as an aim in the late 1980s. Today, we stand looking upon self-reliance and indigenization as a battlefield validated and tested reality, as the Vice Chief of Air Staff eloquently brought out. The success of Operation Sindoor marks a techno-doctrinal shift, demonstrating the capability of our indigenous systems. It is indeed notable and a matter of fact that our indigenous ISR grids proved resilient. Indian drones and loiter munitions delivered precise, devastating strikes and effect. Indigenous ESM and EW systems countered adversary networks, space-based assets enabled real-time targeting and navigation, and AI-supported surveillance shortened the sensor-to-shooter cycles. The operation demonstrated that Indian technology is no longer experimental. It is now combat-proven. And moving forward, looking upon technology as a new currency of deterrence, we have to be mindful that it relies on capability which has today gone beyond platforms to network and knowledge centricity. Our deterrence capability will need to develop the key emerging and recently proven technologies, including, as I mentioned, autonomous systems, especially swarm capability, long-range precision fires, counter-space resilience, directed energy weapons, quantum secure communications, and AI-enabled decision dominance. The side that exploits or even goes on to control the information decision action cycle at the operational and strategic levels, and the famed OODA, Observe, Orient, Decide, Act, loop at the tactical levels, will go on to dominate the battle space. In this regard, it is important to reiterate the central role of space, cyber, and other niche technologies whereby modern warfare has transcended physical geography. The space domain enables real-time ISR, navigation redundancy, early warning, and battlefield transparency. The cyber and electromagnetic spectrum enables network, data manipulation, network denial, cognitive disruption, and even critical infrastructure functioning. Niche technologies include AI-enabled targeting, autonomous logistics, predictive maintenance, and synthetic advanced training and simulation with a future soldier operating within a global combat cloud. And these all technologies are under advanced stages of development and induction in the Indian Armed Forces today, even as we speak. In order to support the rapidly changing techno-tactical environment amidst a fluid strategic environment, India's defense procurement has also undergone major structural transformations in recent years. With the IDEX and startup integration, fast-track acquisition cycles, emergency procurement windows, which I now understand are getting incorporated as mainstream fast-track procedures, private sector production lines, MSME participation, and an enhancement of dual-use technology pipelines. This shift from a buyer's military to a builder's military and onwards to an indigenous development and design military industrial innovation complex is well underway. This will require sustained impetus to the defense R&D ecosystem with strong interactive participation amongst the key stakeholders, which of course includes the armed forces as towards operational validation and the practitioners, but also industry, especially the production scalability and blockchain, full supply chain resilience and robustness. Startups for their disruptive, innovative capabilities, DRDO as the foundation for strategic technologies in areas that may not be cost effective for private industry to invest in, academia for the research depth, and not to forget continuing importance of global partners, not just for the economies of scale, but also to provide the collaborative edge. This fusion is essential for rapid prototyping, field trials, tactical adaptation, and life cycle sustainment. At the tactical level, transformation is already visible across niche capabilities, which includes drone platforms and swarm units, loiter munition batteries, counter-UAS grids, AI-assisted artillery targeting, integrated air defense nodes, and satellite-enabled communications. The battlefield, ladies and gentlemen, is evolving into a sensor-saturated, shooter-dense environment. Transparency is replacing surprise, unless technology provides the critical asymmetry. To support these efforts and develop the ecosystem, we must not forget investment in human capital. Emerging imperatives include tech-native soldiers, AI literate commanders, cyber EW specialists, space operational cadres, simulation-based training, AV/VR combat rehearsal. And this has to extend not just at the operational level, but down to unit level training to be able to adapt and in cases, reviews of our operational doctrines. The rising ecosystem will necessarily depend on collaborative efforts, not just within the country, but also with trusted international partners. Co-development, defense exports, MRO facilities in country, and establishing India as a regional training and technical hub will go a long way to boost our indigenous capability and capacity. In conclusion, I can state with confidence that events such as the Bharat Tech Defense Show are central to the efforts and initiatives that are outlined by networking the key stakeholders in India's indigenous ecosystem. And we look forward to moving from Atmanirbharta to Atma Vishwas, from technology absorption to technology leadership, and from battlefield dependence to battlefield dominance. I wish the participants a healthy, vigorous interaction, which without doubt will throw up new ideas, initiatives, and innovations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on and invite the next speaker on the dais. Lieutenant General A.K. Bhatt is the founding Director General of the Indian Space Association. In his 39 years military career, he served as Director General Military Operations DGMO during the 2017 Doklam face-off and commanded the prestigious Chinar Corps in Srinagar. He is a graduate of the Army Staff College, UK, and holds an MPhil in Defense and Strategic Studies. Beyond his space industry leadership, he was appointed by the President of India as Chairman of the Board of Governors of IIT Kota and IIT Ranchi. He is a recipient of the Param Vishist Seva Medal, Uttam Yuddha Seva Medal, Ati Vishist Seva Medal, Vishist Seva Medal, and Sena Medal. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant General A.K. Bhatt.
Good morning, Jai Hind. Firstly, Air Marshal Kapoor, the Vice Chief of Air Staff, Admiral S.J. Singh, and all the eminent guests today. And most importantly, the organizers and the advisory body, Air Marshal Dharkar, Major General Dhingra, and Admiral Mohit Gupta, who have asked me to come here. It's an honor to be here at the Bharat Defense Tech Seminar 2026 and talk on aspects and most importantly on space. To firstly look at the global security environment today, it is no longer, as we know, predictable. It is volatile, it is technology driven, and is being increasingly defined by simultaneous pressures across multiple domains. The war in Ukraine has fundamentally reshaped our understanding of modern conventional conflict. We have witnessed the decisive role of drones, loitering ammunition, AI-assisted targeting, electronic warfare, and most importantly, satellite-enabled intelligence given by commercial players. And of course, resilient communication, which has also come from space. Commercial technologies in this war have rapidly been militarized. Software updates have altered battlefield outcomes, and supply chains have become strategic targets. At the same time, the conflict between Hamas and Israel has demonstrated the complexity of asymmetric and hybrid warfare rocket attacks combined with drone incursions, tunnel networks, cyber operations, information warfare, and intense urban combat have revealed how both kinetic and non-kinetic tools now are operating in tandem. Narrative shaping on social media unfolds alongside ground operations. Psy operations accompanying precision strikes have now become the order of the day. And from these two conflicts, three clear lessons have emerged. First, technological agility determines battlefield relevance. Secondly, kinetic and non-kinetic operations are now inseparable. And thirdly, resilience, cyber, space, logistics, industrial is critical as a firepower. And for India, these lessons are just not theoretical. They are the new reality. With us, in the north, we face a very technologically advanced adversary in China. Recent years have reminded us that the stability along the line of control cannot be assumed. We observe rapid infrastructure development, integrated air defense systems, enhanced ISR, and fusion of civilian and military technologies in areas such as AI, quantum research, and space systems. And equally significant are the grey zone tactics. Incremental territorial assertions, cyber probing, electronic warfare, satellite surveillance, and information operations designed to test our thresholds without triggering a full-scale conflict. And to our west, Op Shindur being there very recently, we confront a persistent hostility from Pakistan. While conventional deterrence frameworks remain in place, the threat spectrum includes cross-border terrorism, proxy actions, radicalization networks which are working within our country, and disinformation campaigns. Sub-conventional actions calibrated below the threshold of war aim to destabilize while avoiding escalation. And the possibility of collusive dynamics between our northern and western adversary further complicate our strategic calculus. They are compressing our warning times and expanding complexity in operations for us. Beyond the land borders, the threat landscape expands further. Cyber intrusions, targeting critical infrastructure, disinformation campaigns aimed at social cohesion, vulnerabilities in our satellite networks, maritime competition in the Indian Ocean region, and economical and technological coercion are there. This is the era of grey zone warfare, where coercive actions below the threshold of declared war, but steadily eroding our strategic advantage, will be there. Attribution is now blurred, escalation is managed carefully, legal and doctrinal ambiguities are being exploited, and in such an environment, deterrence must be multidimensional. A modern border is not guarded by soldiers alone. It is secured by surveillance drones, AI-enabled analytics, hardened communication networks, resilient satellites, electronic warfare systems, and indigenous microelectronics. A modern response is not only kinetic, it is cyber, informational, electronic, and economic. And that is why the theme of BDTS very rightly has been selected as defense from code to combat readiness. Because today, a line of code can disable a radar system. A spoofed navigation signal can misguide precision munition. A cyber attack can paralyze the entire command networks. A viral disinformation campaign can shape global narratives before facts emerge. Conversely, an indigenous AI algorithm can detect threats in real time. A secure operating system can protect mission-critical infrastructure. A resilient satellite architecture can ensure uninterrupted communication. In the seminar, I'm sure we will focus towards India's defense, towards technological supremacy aligned with the spirit of Atmanirbhar Bharat. Self-reliance in defense technology is not isolationism. It is our strategic autonomy. In a world of sanctions regimes, supply chain disruptions, and technological denial, indigenous capabilities ensure operational continuity under stress. In this seminar, I'm sure we are talking of robotics, artificial intelligence, cyber security, and most importantly, space. Space being my current subject, in India, we are definitely better off in this domain, thanks to 60 years of heritage of ISRO, which now is being transferred to the private industry. Just in 4 to 5 years, ever since the Indian government has opened space to private companies, there are 5 companies who have already launched satellites. There are 2 companies who are on the threshold of launching orbital rockets. And there are many who are working in the domain of analysis and multiple products in ISR, PNT, and communication. In fact, not only that, private sector today has also gone into the domains of SSA, space situational awareness, where companies in India, startups in India, would be providing this very critical technology to the defense forces also. And the defense forces have, in this domain, taken a very positive step. Firstly, by the creation of DSA, which Air Marshal Dharkar was the first DG to make it, to defining the requirements of the defense forces by laying down 75 defense space challenges. There's been a quantum step of faith on the industry, and that has also manifested in that the 52 critical satellites being manufactured for defense, which are under the SBS-3, 31 of them are being produced by private companies. And let me assure you, they will be doing an excellent job of it. I end here by once again emphasizing that cyberspace, drones, the information domain, along with kinetic capabilities, is all critical for India in this very challenging geopolitical environment. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much. And before we call the next speaker, I would like to request Air Marshal Nagesh Kapoor to please felicitate Srimati Deepti Mohil Chawla. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Srimati Deepti Mohil Chawla, a 1995 batch IDAS officer, has 30 years of experience in strategic planning, defense acquisitions, and policy formulation. She has held high-level financial and administrative roles, including financial advisor to the Naval Dockyard and Joint Secretary for Defense Acquisitions. During the COVID-19 pandemic, she coordinated critical medical support and transport for the armed forces. Currently, as Additional Secretary of Department of Defense, she oversees matters concerning the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard, while managing major national infrastructure projects and cyber security policy. Ladies and gentlemen, next speaker on the dais, Srimati Deepti Mohil Chawla.
Good morning. A real honor and privilege to be sharing the dais with such eminent personalities in the field of defense. And also looking around, I see such people, seniors I have worked with, associated with. So it's a pleasure to be here, last but not the least, hopefully. So my panache is that I like to speak from my heart, and that is what I'm going to do. No texts, no script. I'll share a few experiences that I have acquired and over my 30 years in the defense sector, and how I perceive this sector as we go ahead. So in the Unified Commanders Conference, which happened in 2025 last year, the Honorable Prime Minister gave us a very key word. It's an acronym, JAY. Jointness, Atmanirbharta, and innovation. And I will extend this, and that is the buzz in the Ministry of Defense these days, is from Jay, we must achieve Vijay. So in order to make ourselves successful, this is the mantra which the Prime Minister has given, and we have to inculcate that not only in letter, but in spirit, in our action, in our policy. Jointness in every sphere within the armed forces, between all the government departments, between all the citizens, between all the industry that we cooperate with our international friendly foreign countries. So jointness extends from the individual to the globe. Atmanirbharta, we started with this government telling us that Make in India is the way to go. And from that cycle, we have come to Atmanirbharta, because without self-reliance, we will not be able to be completely strategic. The strategic autonomy that we talk about will not be achieved without self-reliance. And innovation, because from that learning curve of Make in India to Atmanirbhar Bharat, we have to now own in India. That is where innovation comes in. Until and unless we make this, take this path and actually innovate and own in India, we will be always dependent on some suppliers, some countries, and we will not truly be the world power that we all hope and seek to become. So for Vijay from Jay, I would do a quick SWOT analysis. In fact, I was just thinking about it sitting here. So my SWOT analysis is, what are our strengths? We have never before in the history of India had this kind of a committed, continuous, credible leadership. The clarity of the vision of our leadership and the trajectory that the leadership is taking us on, we have never seen in the past decades. So that is an unbelievable strength that India has, which no other country right now, as we see how the geostrategic sphere is evolving and the conflicts in the nation world over are evolving, never have we seen this kind of leadership. And that is a major strength. What is our second strength? Yuva Shakti. These are words that we keep hearing, but they have a lot of depth in it. The youthfulness of our population is the strength of our country. These are the young people who will ensure jointness, Atmanirbharta, and innovation. These are the people who will help build the India of our dreams. So the youthfulness of our demography is a strength. What else is our strength? I have seen in the past 3 decades of my experience in the defense sector that we were always cynical, and there was always an inherent conflict happening between individuals, between organizations, between departments, within the hierarchy of the services. So from that conflict and cynicism, we've actually evolved to cooperation and collaboration. In the same ministry, I now find that people talk to each other effortlessly. There is no, there is breaking of rank. There is no, we are not getting just carried away with our stars and stripes. We are actually speaking to each other. We are actually ideating together, and we are actually trying to find a way ahead. It's a huge strength. that I have seen we have reached in. So that's the third strength. I see that among our young children also. They are just working towards doing well for themselves, doing well for the nation. That kind of naysayers have diminished. So that is a strength now. What are our weaknesses? Our weaknesses are lying in the fact that critical technologies are not held with us. Critical raw materials are still needed. We need to import them. We are only now starting to build up reserves, thinking in terms of aggregating demands and building up our supplies. But the weakness stays that we do not have the critical tech, particularly in the defense sector, and the raw materials are also a limitation. What other weakness do we have? The other weakness that we have is the supply chain dependence that we have. We may be having lots of startups emerging. We have a lot of MSMEs in the defense sector. We have leading manufacturers in the defense sector. But somewhere, we still have the international supply chains to deal with, and that is becoming a problem even for our armed forces, because when it comes to our legacy equipment, there is so much of dependence from some of our foreign suppliers. So that is a weakness. I'll come to the O, and I'll tell you how the weakness also becomes the opportunity. The other weakness that I see is the pace at which we are working. The agility that we need to have in our system and our thought processes is still not there. And I again would refer to our leadership, which said कि बाकी दुनिया रॉकेट की चाल चल रही है और डिफेंस में हम अभी भी चीटी की चाल चलते हैं. So that is what is a weakness, and therein lies the opportunity, and therein lies what we need to do. So we need to be very agile. We need to just break out from the silos of our work. We need to evolve our work culture. We need to think on our feet and just go ahead and do it, not be tied down by the overbearing nature of our systems at times because of the hierarchies that we deal with, or the whole written word of the rules and the procedures. These can be adapted and can be changed as we go ahead, and we are doing that. And that is why 2025 was the year of reforms, with this very objective, that we evolve and reform our policies to be able to work the way we ought to work. So, covering the three weaknesses, I come to the opportunities. Of course, in the weaknesses lie in the opportunities, but importantly, look at where we are. We are now the third largest economy in the world. We are raring to go. We have quite a bit of material resources, and our human resources are amazing. So herein lies the opportunity for all of you people, all the stakeholders in the defense sector. Not only do we make in India, but we make for the world. That is the opportunity. We need to export, and we are. Our exports over the past decade have risen like 30 times. It's an unbelievable statistic, but that is how we are going, and it is still, there is limitless possibility. Not only our regular Asian and African partners, Europe is looking towards us, and so are the two American continents. So defense exports, a huge opportunity. Bharat Defense Tech and such seminars are a huge opportunity. Platforms such as this are bringing us, all stakeholders, the policymakers, the industrialists, the think tank personnel who ideate on matters, who have the time to envision how we are going to be as we go ahead. So it brings such diverse group of stakeholders together from across the spectrum of the country. So seminars such as this are a huge opportunity. We need to have more of these seminars and workshops so that the skepticism that we may have about each other, we can break through that, we can all work together, and I assure you that the other opportunity that is there, and it's a given, is the rising defense budget. There is a tendency to peg the defense budget to the GDP, but let's talk in terms of absolute terms. We are looking at 6.5 lakh crore budget with about nearly 2 lakh crores in just dedicated towards modernization and infrastructure. This could be probably the budget of some small country. There lies the huge opportunity that financial resources are just not something that anybody should talk about. In our country, that is no more a weakness, and the commitment of the government towards the modernization of the armed forces and the deep financial resources we are able to provide for that is the hugest opportunity that is possible. And going forward, I think we are going to see year-on-year increase to the range of 10 to 20%, depending on our ability to absorb. Now comes the threat. So the threat is the typical threat. The threat is there to our borders, to our nation, in terms of the inimical forces that we are dealing with. And they are not just your overt, identified, I won't like to use the word enemies, adversaries, but we also have a lot of covert adversaries who are attacking us day in and day out in the cyberspace, in the actual physical space of our nation, in our waters, in our air, in every which way. And as we keep growing, and we are, तो वो होता है ना कि नज़र लगती है, तो वो नज़र जो है वो हमारे लिए एक बहुत बड़ी threat है. That's a very big threat, the actual security. And therein again lies the importance of the armed forces and all of us in the defense sector, that we need to bolster the national security so that we become indomitable and really nobody could dare even looking at us, no nazar on us. So there lies a threat. The other threat that lies is that sometimes, not sometimes, it is happening, is the brain drain. Please do not underestimate that a lot of our very talented youth think of going overseas before they think of working for the nation. That is a threat that we need to address. We need to have skill development, of course, at all levels, but we also need to attract our intellectual and scientific brains to stay in the country, innovate in the country. So like I started to say, that so that we, from Make in India to Atmanirbhar Bharat to actually owned in India, we take the full circle. That is a live threat, and again, it is each of our responsibility to see that our children get good opportunities in the nation. We respect science, we respect research, and instead of getting our children to go abroad, getting them attracted towards what they perceive is a better life, we make better life for them to be here, to be in India, and work in India. We need to do that. So this is my quick SWOT analysis of what it would take to make Jai se Vijay. And I thank once again. That's it. I just wanted to talk from my heart to tell you that we are at the, we are just there. We are at the penultimate parav, so as to say, to reach where we need to reach, which is to take our country from the third largest economy to the first largest economy, and a truly indomitable nation. So let's work on our strengths, convert our opportunities, protect ourselves from the threats, and the weaknesses have to be converted into another set of opportunities. So we double up all our opportunities, use our strengths, make ourselves a better, brighter nation. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Vice Admiral Sanjay Jasjit Singh. Thank you so much, Lieutenant General A.K. Bhatt, Srimati Deepti Mohil Chawla, and thank you so much to our guest of honor, Air Marshal Nagesh Kapoor. Thank you so much for wise words. And your words have set the tone for this summit. Your vision will guide our discussion. On behalf of every delegate, every innovator, every soldier who will benefit from these technologies, we thank you from the bottom of our heart. Thank you so much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed to our first session, may I take a moment to express our deepest gratitude to our advisory board, Air Marshal Sujit P. Dharkar, Rear Admiral Mohit Gupta, Major General Ashok K. Dhingra, and Dr. B.K. Das for their strategic guidance. To our associate partners, the Indian Space Association and the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce. To our knowledge partners, the United Service Institution, the United Service Institution of India and the Association of Plasma Science. To the Government of Maharashtra, our state partner, for their unwavering support for defense manufacturing. To all our sponsors, exhibitors and media partners, you make this vision possible. And to our organizing team at Checked-in for their tireless work in orchestrating this national platform. The exhibition is now of